Back into another episode of the Washington SXM podcast. As always, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to click that bell to get notified whenever I drop a video. So, I'm going back into history again about African history, where this king, Changamire Dombo, you don't hear about him. Most people don't know about him. I didn't know about him until I'm doing this video. I did some research on African history, and I get it from the Home Team History channel. I will put a link in the description for them so you can go and check out other videos that they also do. So let's get into it. Most people don't know about this king and his history. So let's get into it because it's hidden from us by the Europeans and the Westerners because they don't want us to know our history. So let's get into it.
An African ruler we'll be speaking about today is Changamire Dombo.
Changamire
Dombo was a ruler of the Rosby Empire that was founded by him in 1660. It was located in the modern country of Zimbabwe amongst one of the Shona peoples. Now, as we in the diaspora look at African history, I think it's important for us to do our own analysis and determine our noteworthy figures, because if we don't, we may miss something that is of great importance to us. Many celebrated African figures were presented to us by people outside of our community.
Yes, which is true.
For this reason, why we miss out on legendary figures like Changamire Dombo.
Stick up in. I'm guarantee you, most of who's watching this video, you never hear of Changamire Dombo. I didn't either. It's because I was doing some history research on the Zulu. That's when I was doing a research on Shaka, the Zulu king that trained the Zulu nation military. But this guy was a century before Shaka, and that's how I woke up on his name. And I never heard of his name before, and he did way more damage to the slave trade than the Portuguese, more than Shaka did, and more than King Kanaka too. I did a video on him as well. So let's continue.
We don't really hear much about him at all in popular culture. In order to understand this great ruler, we have to understand where he came from and the conditions in which he formed his empire. Before the great Changamire created his dynasty of Rosby rulers, the Mwenimutapa Empire was the primary state in the region. The Portuguese constantly tried to get a stronghold in the region, and their efforts were continually frustrated by the well-organized economic system of the Mwenimutapa throne. That is, until things went left for Mwenimutapa with succession disputes.
Listen to that name.
World history. Succession disputes were the ruin of Mwenimutapa as various princes vied for power. The only way a contender got the advantage was by calling on the Portuguese for military assistance to gain the throne. Once that happened, Portugal was essentially able to influence the politics of the great Shona state. Portugal began to dominate the area south of the Zambezi River.
Stick up in. See, this is what I keep telling people. And when I'm doing all my research on history, it's always the tribes or the kings. When they're fighting for power, they always call in the Westerners to come and help them. And when they do that, typically the Westerner gets an area for themselves, and then they colonize that area. So they give them a piece of property, a piece of land for their help, and then that's when they themselves influence the king to do their bidding, basically.
Was in rapid decline. Civil unrest became common as the state took a downward spiral, but this did not deter local Shona men from establishing their own militias to acquire power and fight back against European and Mwenimutapa
Which was their own fault.
The most popular of these local Shona warlords was a former cattle herder named Dombo. After displays of power and positioning himself as the principal warlord in the region, he gained the respect of his men and was granted the title Changamire, meaning Lord. Changamire then developed a...
Stick up in. So you hear what the name Changamire means? It means Lord or King or ruler. It's earned, it's not given. So because he was he rise to the ranks the fastest, and he was so good at military things, he got the name. And also, I look at the name Dombo in the language. Dombo means stone, rock. But in the English language, they have Dombo as somebody that's tebe or stupid or crazy. But in Zimbabwe, that time, Dombo means rock. So Changamire Dombo means Lord of Rock, basically.
Powerful army known as the Rosby. It became a dominant force in the northeast Zimbabwe plateau. This great Changamire consolidated his power by defeating other kingdoms vying for power, destroying capitals, and absorbing other local Shona peoples. His first encounter with the Portuguese was at the Battle of Mwangwe in 1684. What's interesting about Changamire Dombo was that he didn't just use brute force to defeat the Portuguese, but psychological warfare became his greatest weapon. At this point,
stick up in. And also when I did a little more digging, 'cause after I watched this video, I went and do some digging. And Changamire Dombo, he was a brilliant strategist, and in warfare, he was good in warfare. In the book Art of War, all of those things in the Art of War, Dombo already did in the 16th century. Because that's how he defeated the Portuguese. He didn't use blue force, even though his army was huge. Then he had more men than the Portuguese. The only thing the Portuguese had over him was they had weapons. But he used strategy and military tactic to beat them, and that frustrated the hell out of them. Let's continue.
Particular battle, Portuguese gunfire continued to save them from total annihilation, as they were almost routed several times, according to the sources. However, early the next day, the Portuguese awoke to find that they were surrounded by fire made by Rosvi women, instructed to do so on Changamire Dombo's orders. This made the Portuguese believe that they were surrounded, and morale plummeted, and they took flight. Changamire didn't only deal with the Portuguese, but other African enemies like the Mwene Mutapa Empire. He constantly defeated all the...
Stick up in the same empire that Carly and the Portuguese come fight for them. This is the same tribe or king Changamire Dombo defeated, plus other tribes as well.
African foes, and at one point, the Mwene Mutapa throne seeking independence from Portugal asked for the Changamire's aid. The great Rosvi ruler accepted the call, and in November 1693, Changamire rendered the Portuguese helpless under his rule. The Rosvi
like 10 years after they called it the Portuguese,
destroyed churches, defiled their holy vessels and sacred images, dug up Portuguese graves, and committed other acts that totally demoralized them. This was perhaps one...
Stick up in, and hear what he did? He burned. Remember, as I tell, in Africa them time, Africa did not worship or believe in Christianity. So Christianity was never an African religion. It was brought there by the Westerners. So Changamire Dombo did not care for the churches and the dead. Remember, he burned the churches and he dig up the dead ones, and he take what the body out of the ground and burn it, I think. So that was a psychological warfare actually. So it messed with the minds of the Portuguese because they can't believe that's been done. And then when he lit the fire around them, again, that's another tactic, strategy they using to beat these Portuguese. So he did military. He was a brilliant strategist, and he's also very good at using warfare in mental warfare on them. So it made them more afraid of him. And I think after that, they try to say he's a demon or a witch. But again, Westerners always do this when we encounter anything in Africa, whether it's the foundation. Bolo, stop barking. Whether it's foundation, building buildings, they say it's aliens build the buildings because they don't give black people any credit. If it's warfare, they say, oh, they are demons, they are witches, because they cannot understand how they are being beaten by these so-called savages, as they put it.
One of the most humiliating defeats of a European power in all of Southern Africa, the Battle of Islandwangla between the Zulu and the British, only somewhat echoing it in importance. It seemed as though everywhere the Changamire went, the Portuguese were no match. Ironically, the Portuguese were able to seize the Mwene Mutapa throne. That was only because Changamire Dombo didn't intervene.
Exactly.
His campaign
he's a brilliant strategist.
He replaced the ruler there and destroyed Portuguese presence. What Changamire Dombo accomplished was unprecedented in Southern African history, especially if you compare it to Portuguese power exhibited along the Swahili coast. The Changamires and their dynasty prompted many Portuguese settlers to leave the plateau altogether and move into the Zambezi Valley. It's interesting that the name Changamire Dombo does not carry the same fame like that of Shaka Zulu. This is why it's
It's
important
been
that we
hidden.
study African history for ourselves and determine who our greats will be. Well, I'm alive.
Stick up in there. That is finishing. So you see, final thoughts. We had great warriors, kings, strategists, warfare, tactics that great kings in Africa did. God, look. And remember, in the beginning, Changamire Dombo, he wasn't a army personnel. He was a farmer, and because of what he see, he take up the mantle to rise in the ranks and become this great leader. And the same tribe king that called in the Portuguese to help him destroy the other tribes because they was fighting for power, they themselves turned around. I think that was in the 83 or 82. Then in 1693 and 94, they call Changamire Dombo to come and assist them in kicking back the Portuguese out, because what? They can't manage because they don't have the knowledge, the psychological warfare that Dombo had. And he conquered so many other tribes, as they said, and basically bring Zimbabwe together. So he was a king of Zimbabwe. So this is to show you, and I've never heard of this guy before until I accidentally run into him, put up in his name, and then that's when I said, let me see who he is. And now he was this great general, basically. And he's been hidden from history. I think this is done because they don't want to admit defeat, and they don't want to say Africans was so good at battle. Because don't forget that they say we are monkeys and we are savages because we live in the bushes. But yet, every single structure the Westerners come onto, which is like the pyramids and the castles and the homes that was built, the civilization that was designed. What they say it's aliens built it, or they say it's some other Westerner designed it. But because they don't give us no credit for whatever we accomplished through history. And Africa accomplished a lot through history, but it's hidden. So as black people, we need to go and look for these stories, these kings and tribes, and see what they have done through history. Me myself is not, until I started my channel, is when I started doing my research and started looking into African history, and it's when it's blowing my mind because I'm seeing some brilliant things that have been accomplished through history, and it's been hidden from us through history because these things you don't learn these things in school. So I'll put the link for the channel, which is the home team history, in the description, so you can go and check out some other videos that they do. But I like this channel because they does go in depth. Because I go and do some more research on my own, and then it coincides with what they're saying. So that's why I use this video to get that, to push this narrative across. Anyway, you don't know what it is. It's the Washington X-Can podcast. You don't know? Like, share, comment, and subscribe. You don't know what it is? Come back again, and we're gonna do another video on Shaka from the Zulu Nation next. You don't know? Peace, one love, boom bang. You don't know?